Ultimately, shame at its foundation is feeling fundamentally flawed, unlovable, or beyond repair. And how many of us can say, yes, I felt that at some point?
Yes, like in our deepest heart of hearts, like in our inner being. Welcome back to Fasting Food Faith. I'm Brianne Sims, RN, co-founder of King of Fasting. My other half is once again not here. He will be back on the podcast at some point, not to worry. But currently, God has us in this season of the three of us sharing with you on a weekly basis for the next few months. And the reason for that is because he's having us walk through some things together, and he wants us to share and sort of model what that looks like for you and to invite you into what he has us doing. And the first of that is quite obviously, this is the Fasting Food Faith show. So fasting comes first. And we're doing a fast together. We're embarking on a 21-day fast, of which today is the first day. So how are you ladies feeling? First day of 21-day fast.
Not confident at all. Next. We need to know that it's the thing to do, but yes, feel a little shaken. But that's all right.
Yeah, agreed. I was feeling a little, like, I don't know how to describe, shaky on the inside last night as far as like embarking on this and what we know that he's wanting us to walk through together, and being vulnerable and humble, and in that it's kind of scary. So yeah, we're all just gonna walk through this with us together.
Nope.
So how are you feeling on your first of the 21 days?
Not like I thought I would be. Usually I'm, like, let's do this. I'm ready. And I'm kind of just like, meh, I'm doing it. And I don't like that feeling, but I mean, being real.
Yeah.
Being real. So I need a heart attitude shift, and God's going to do that.
We 100% will do that. So we're all feeling a little bit shaky going into this, but we're here and we're committed to being obedient to what God's wanting us to do and what he's wanting us to share. So we're going to be walking through this together every week. I hope that you'll join us. We're just inviting you into this. We would love to have your thoughts and opinions and questions and all the things in the comments, so we can interact with you on this, because we're doing a study together, and we've been meeting every week and praying together and talking to God and walking through some things together already. And now he wants us to specifically dive into a topic that's been sort of under the radar or swept under the rug, or not exactly fully understood by us, even though we know it's at the root of so many things. And it's kind of it's almost like I don't want to say the word because I don't want people to run. But also at the same time, like, we're gonna have to talk about it.
Exactly.
And that is shame. Yes. And we were just discussing before we hit record that shame entered the world at the garden with the fall. When sin entered the world, what was the first thing that happened with Adam and Eve? Is that they ran and hid from God in shame, because they recognized sin in their lives, and they were afraid of being known and seen in that shame and that sin. And so that's where we're going with this, because it's very deeply rooted in the world and in our hearts. Fortunately, there's a lot of fear, anxiety, hopelessness, depression, like all the things that come from that are rooted in that. But we don't always necessarily recognize it. Shame isn't something that we really typically recognize, I think, in a lot of the ways that it shows up. Like, that's not the word that I would necessarily use for some of the things that I have felt, even though now reading some of this, I think that that's exactly what was happening, and that's exactly what was causing all of the, issues. So getting to the root of it is where God is taking us next. Yeah, and recognizing it and being able to uproot it. We are reading a book together called The Soul of Shame by Kurt Thompson. So if you want to join us in that, go grab the book, audiobook, study guide, whatever, and you can follow along with us. We're just going to talk about the introduction, just the introduction and just sort of the overview of it. But I think it was very eye-opening for all of us. And just how much it encompasses so much and is at the root of so much. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
So another way to look at shame is that shame is our identity issue. It's everything that goes into who we are and what the world and the enemy have done to disrupt who God has created us to be. God has created us for intimacy, has created us for fellowship. He has created us to live as fully loved, deeply loved, fully pleasing, and completely accepted. That is who he created us before time began and who he created Adam and Eve to be in the garden.
Mm.
But sin came into the picture, and so did shame. And shame has disrupted that and has been a constant scheme and plan that the enemy is using against all of us to destroy us so that we will not see ourselves the way God sees us. So we won't walk in the gifts that he has given us. So we won't carry out the calling and have the courage and the faith to be the light that God has created us to be in this
Mhm.
dark world,
Mhm.
to take his gospel and also to walk with people and to be God's church, his community. We were just talking about it's interesting how God has brought this group of us together. And one of the answers that he talks about in here for shame is to learn to walk it out in community. That shame actually isolates and shame keeps us from relationship. Not only relationship with God, but relationship with other people. And so that's what we're endeavoring to do the next few months is to walk through shame, to be honest, to be real with one another, and we'll try to be as real as we can with you about our struggles and our journeys. And so if we're falling apart some week, just know that we're being real.
Yeah. Yes.
And we want to be real that it's not just an easy fix, that it's going to be a journey to become free of shame and to see ourselves fully as God sees us. And that's his heart and his desire for us is that connectedness, because shame also makes us isolate from God. We run from God, we hide, just like Adam and Eve did. We don't want to come to God because we don't think we're worthy for God. So ultimately, shame at its foundation is feeling fundamentally flawed, unlovable, or beyond repair. And how many of us can say, yes, I felt that at some
Yes, like in our deepest heart of hearts, like in our inner being, like we all feel those things at some point on some level. That's just how I am.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is it?
No.
Is that how God made you?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point.
Yes. Yes. So I like this, how this phrase is that on a larger scale within the biblical narrative, your journey, like reframing spiritual life not as a quest for moral perfection. I love how he states that in this study guide, is that our spiritual life is not a quest for moral perfection.
Mm-hmm.
It's not I mean, I feel like I need to restate that over and over again. But what it is a journey toward restored relationship with God and others and even yourself. It's all about restored relationship with God because that's what was destroyed in the garden was relationship with God. And so your journey is about relationship and about connecting with others. And shame makes that impossible.
Mm-hmm.
That's the enemy's tactic. It's to separate us from God and others because we were created for community and relationship.
He also says in the book, too, we were created for joy, to be seen by others, delighted in by others, and, the experience of joy is not something that any of us realizes a big, huge missing piece.
Right? Connection leads to joy
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
because then you can be seen, loved, appreciated as a person.
Yeah, no.
Yes, deeply known. Yes.
Mhm.
And how many of us do really want to be known?
That deeply. If you're being honest, then you have to be vulnerable to be known.
Exactly.
Yes, and that's what people struggle with because of shame. It's just this vicious cycle that just keeps going around and around, and we are just keep getting in this wheel and going around and around and around, and then wondering how come we can never get off and why does nothing ever get better? Is because we're not inviting God into the picture to help us uproot the shame. And I like how he says that vulnerability is not a weakness, but it's the pathway through which shame loses its power. And when people can hold painful stories without turning away from each other, nurturing communities that cultivate honesty, empathy, and creative renewal. Like, it leads to that retelling of the stories that we believe about ourselves and others and God and everyone in relationship and what that looks like. It's basically giving us a new lens of truth and acceptance as children of God through grace. We're saved through grace. So having that grace for ourselves, others, that's just all key, but we have to receive God's grace first. And so that's what I think walking through this shame is. But once we begin to recognize it in our lives, I feel like that's a huge key, because I think that I have not been good at recognizing shame for what it was. There's been a lot of other emotions sort of on top of that. You kind of pile everything on top because that's what you're dealing with. That's easier. It sounds better. Well, I'm just dealing with fear, or whatever it is.
Right.
Versus, no, I'm really just dealing with shame. Right.
Is shame really the root at all the tapes that we play in our head of, I'm not good enough, they think this about me, they wouldn't want me around, all the things, I can't do that because I'm gonna fail, all the things. Where did that come from? Where is the point where shame entered our heart and entered each of our lives? And I think that's a really good place to start asking Jesus of, where did this start? And for some of us, it may be conception. A lot of times when children are born outside of wedlock or in situations where things are hard, shame can actually begin at conception. And Jesus can go back there and he can bring light into that darkness that started. There's research that talks about how the mom was feeling or what was going on in the environment, how that affects the child and how the synapses and all the different things, the chemicals and things, how those develop in the unborn child. And so it can begin there. And maybe that's not it, but shame has begun somewhere in your life. And what was it that the enemy spoke into your heart and your mind at that point that became your truth, that became your perspective, that became your reality and determined who you are instead of who God calls you?
So deeply rooted that it keeps you in that vicious, never-ending cycle where you just end up right back.
Exactly.
Creating patterns that we don't even realize that we're doing, behaviors. And
Yes.
yes, I like that he says it's not about the behavior. He said that somewhere. It's not about fixing behaviors. It's about fixing what we're saying about ourselves and who we see ourselves as, and letting God come into it and rewrite the story, rewrite the tapes. Because he has a story that he created each one of us for, and a plan and a journey that he has created us each to join him in. He has a job for each of us, just like Moses, just like the disciples, just like whoever your favorite Bible story character is. God invited them into a journey and into a job and a plan that he had specifically designed them for. The problem is we're not living in that place where we're joining God in and being fulfilled and carrying out relationships with others and with God. And as a church, we're not carrying out that community and also the whole job that God has called us to be, because too many of us are living out of our shame and our pain, and we don't even realize it.
Right, exactly. And a lot of times projecting that onto other people, which just perpetuates that whole shame circle of shaming someone, you being shamed, shaming someone, you be like, it's a continual process of just isolation is really what it leads to, and pushing people away. And that's not what God has for
But
us.
that's why it's so successful in keeping us in these never-ending loops, because the author points out that healing only occurs when you're able to revisit that shame and all the stories within communities of compassion, vulnerability, and grace that allows the brain itself to reshape through repeated experiences of connection. And I like that because it really speaks to me, and I know many people, even you two, understand. But years ago, before I really got to know Teresa and was still just getting to know Bree, I wanted nothing to do with women Bible studies or women groups. Or if you would have told me those many years ago I'd be sitting here talking with these two about the things I talk about now, I would have laughed in your face, because I didn't want anything to do with that sort of community, because I had too much shame and I didn't belong here, or there's no way they're ever going to understand me or accept me. And, repeated experiences kept me stuck in that loop of not wanting to go there at all, period. And also being so deeply rooted in, I'm a nerd and I like to just exist behind my computer screen. I don't want to be seen at all. And there's lots of people out there that go through that right now. So, but trusting God and learning how to talk to Him it wasn't just trusting God, it was also trusting God's people, because you do need that community. And finding that was extremely scary for me because you can be led astray so easily. So, but God knows what He's doing. So finding your trust in Him and placing those people in your life is a big part of it. But my point being, if I would not be here, have been here years ago without the walk that we've been through together to establish this community, because without that it took a lot of work with God to get me to even where I trust talking to people. And I know you two can attest to that too. So that is part of it, but
No, you're completely right.
Exactly. And it's taken years of fellowship and prayer together and Bible study and consistently building each other up in the Lord
And being honest.
and being
Taking all
completely
those-
vulnerable and honest about our struggles and taking each other to Jesus, and that to build enough trust to do this together, to fast together, to do this Bible studies together, to trust our innermost being, the place where shame resides, to be dealt with in a safe place. And now with you. What does that look like? So I'm excited and open to the journey that God has for us, even though I'm not like, woo,
Yeah.
let's go. Because we know there's going to be some ups and downs. It is going to be good because of all of His faithfulness and all that He's already done in our hearts, removing painful things and replacing that with His heart for us and His goodness. We can know and trust that He has good in store for us in this, which He had to bring us to that place to be able to trust in that in order to walk through this with Him. And we're hoping that this brings some deep soul level understanding and healing to you also, and sets an example for you to be able to follow, to take these painful areas in your own heart to Jesus and ask Him for His help. How do you see me walking forward, and how can I release these painful areas to you, and you can cover us with truth? Because that's really what this is all about, is replacing the lies of the enemy and the shame with the truth, with a lens of truth, with God's truth stamped on our hearts, so that we can walk in the reality of truth and not in the reality of the lies and the shame that the enemy wants us to believe. That our identity is not our sin. Our identity is who God created us to be.
Right.
And please don't believe the lie that you have nobody, because I was very deeply rooted in that there is nobody. I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody that I can relate to. And that's one of the big lies that they want to keep you in, because if you reset your heart posture and ask God, He will come through with that. And He will place, and you need to have the correct heart attitude to actually want to fix yourself, or to want God to fix you, to place you in the community of people that are going to help nurture that and bring you closer to Him. But it does start with you. So if you feel like you've got nobody, check yourself and really talk to God about that and ask Him, and He'll answer you.
Yeah.
In my case, I was not asking for it.
But we were all praying for you, Chelsea.
Yes, that's right.
I was fasting, though, and I was learning how to come back to God and get stronger with my walk with God. I did not ask Him to bring community to me, though, but He brought it to me because He knew I needed it. So I'm just saying, whether you ask for it or not, you can't say I don't have that in my life, because if you really want it, or if you really need it and you're asking God for help, He'll bring it to you.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
Yes, because He wants to get closer to your heart. He is always after your heart and relationship with you, because He loves to be with you.
And we hope to share with you also some of our journey of the inner healing part. We practice daily, weekly with one another, the process of taking Jesus into our pain and into our hurts, and allowing Him to show us these places where shame is residing and where did it begin, and asking Him to come into that place of pain. I think I'll share this. Just walked with my husband through some shame the other day, and it was really neat. We had no idea where his shame started, and God took us back to a point when he was really sick, like 8 months old, and standing in a crib and just feeling like something was fundamentally flawed and wrong with him. There was something wrong with his body. He had celiac, and that's back in the day when no one diagnosed that. No one had any idea. He was very ill and very sick, and everybody around him was afraid. So, what did my husband receive? Fear, and that there was something wrong with you. So, fear and shame came at that point in his life. And so, everything that happens for him, it revolves around shame and fear, and that something is wrong with me. And we asked him where Jesus was at in that memory. And Jesus showed up in the most incredible, miraculous way. Like, he walked up to that crib and he picked my husband up out of that crib and he held him, and he held him close. He held him tight. And he told my husband it wasn't his fault, and that there wasn't anything wrong with him. And it was the first time in his life that he realized, I'm okay. I'm really okay. And where he could feel the presence and love of the Father. And Jesus also took back to a point in his conception and seeing Jesus hold that seed of my husband and him love and care for that seed and see it and see the Father weeping over him and caring about him. And then seeing the Father walk him through a few other situations and opened his eyes to realize my perspective has been wrong all this time about who I am. I have filtered everything through the fact that there is something fundamentally wrong with me. And for him then to be able to begin to uproot that lie, there may be many layers for this lie of shame because it's something where situations keep happening over and over. And because our perspective is shame, we keep seeing it as shame. So it's just building upon it and reinforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing the shame. The enemy is happy to stand there and whisper lies to us and give us more tapes in our head of things that we believe about ourselves. So it may be a process of undoing those layers and uprooting those lies. But to have Jesus come and see him there and get to feel and experience his love and his embrace and his comfort and his safety and his security begins to undo shame. And if we can live deeply loved, fully pleasing, and completely accepted, there will be no place for shame. And shame will fall off of us. And so it is a process, it is a journey, and that's just what we're asking you to join us on is come walk with us and see where the Lord may lead you.
Exactly. It's our greatest desire to see you fully connected, fully loved. God, by him, for him, with him, because that brings about the most transformation, the most joy in our lives, the lives of those around us, and that's what makes a difference for eternity.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this first episode. I hope that you will go hit that subscribe button so you can come and join us every week. And if you enjoyed this and there's someone that you want to walk on this journey with, or you think might be interested in walking this journey with us, we would love it if you send it to them. So thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.
Go fast and be blessed.